like I said, it happens, and hopefully some kids can learn from it, but just don't get caught.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schleck. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Wednesdays is my good friend, Alex Spears. Alex, what's up?
What's up, Andrew?
The NBA Finals going on. Are you who are you a believer in right now? Denver? You think Miami can actually do this? Quick thoughts.
Well, game 2 really got me excited because when people always compare the NBA to other sports, specifically NFL, there's so much more randomness in the NFL, or at least perceived randomness, because it's just single game. It's single game elimination. Anything could happen. Whereas the idea with the NBA is that over the course of 7 games, the best team is going to win the majority of the time. But what we are witnessing right now with the Heat and their shooting, which is historically great. I saw some comparisons to the 2017 Warriors and how they're like percentage points better on open threes than the 2017 Warriors. Like, that gets me excited just because this would represent like a true historical anomaly if they continued this shooting and pulled this off. I mean, for so many reasons, like even beyond the shooting, the fact they were an 8th seed, the fact that they lost the first playing game. So the fact that they won that game too and did it while having another great shooting night just gets me excited. I just want to see if this train, how long is this train going to go, Andrew?
I know. And the thing is, like, they're generating wide open threes for good shooters all the time.
They are.
And they did it in game 1 too, and they just missed them. Like, Max Strus missed like 9 just completely open threes.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, and that is the part of this, is that you can't just do this with a random assortment of guys thrown out there. Like, they do have good shooters on their team that have had good seasons shooting. It's more the fact that they weren't good this season in the regular season and have just come to life and exceeded even what they were previously doing when they were good shooters. So, yeah, I'm very excited. These long time between games, Andrew. Long time. I thought there was a game last night, and I turned on my TV, and then I realized another day.
As somebody who is like scheduling and like trying to organize shows for this, I actually kind of like it. Just
you
because
like it,
of, like the how much of a, I mean, it's just a marathon going through the playoffs, doing podcasts like every single night, trying to make sure
grinding.
They're being done.
You're grinding.
Still a little grinding. So the finals is great. I like the pace of it. Gives you like a little window into what it might be like covering football. Just because you have so many days between games, and you just get to talk about the same stuff over and over again.
Over and over again. Yeah, but I'm very excited. I'm glad that the ratings are good, just to shut everyone up about the ratings for a little while.
It's the most annoying conversation that I just don't care that much about it, and I'm glad the ratings are good too.
Because if they had been bad, then it would have been an entire another like 2-day news cycle of people like reacting to that. But it's like, actually they were better than last year when the Warriors were in it. So all right. Well, we can all shut up.
Warriors Celtics. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Before we get into some scuttlebutt, and there is some scuttlebutt, nothing too juicy at this stage of the pre-draft process, I did want to bring up one of our listeners, Evan McDaniel, at Evan ETM. You probably, if you've listened to the Fry Pod for a while, you probably recognize his name because he's been a long-time listener, and I'm sure that he has asked questions before, because I know when I saw his name, I instantly knew like who he was. I recognized his name instantly. He was involved in a very serious accident over the weekend on Sunday that injured one of his arms in a very serious way. And you can go to his Twitter page if you want to read the details, because they are a little grisly. He used the word fillet in describing what happened to him. Yeah. He had to be, taken to the hospital, and he's going to have a long road to recovery in terms of physical therapy and things like that. So They set up a GoFundMe for him, and trying to reach a goal of $2,000, and we're about halfway there. $1,000 and $1,005. So we're gonna retweet it out again today. And if you're able, there's people don't need $5. Like that's great. Like anything helps, and we just really want to help Evan get to his goal and show him some support, because it sounds like it's going to be a long road to recovery, and we just want him to know that the Thunder fan base is out there thinking about him, knowing that he's going through something really tough right now.
Yeah. I have posted the link in the chat as well. So please do that if you're on here live with us. And I'll also put it in the description of the podcast today. So if you feel so inclined and would like to help out another Thunder fan that's in need, that would be spectacular. Do that today. Do it right now. Even just pause the podcast, go click on the GoFundMe and help take care of Evan a little bit. So,
and hopefully Evan's listening and he will enjoy all this Scuttlebutt talk.
That's right. Here comes the Scuttlebutt.
Okay, so there's not a ton, Andrew. None of this is particularly juicy, but it is kind of reinforcing some things that we've heard since the beginning.
Yeah.
Which that in and of itself is interesting, because I actually think back to last year when like the Jabari Smith to Orlando thing kept being reiterated over and over again.
Yeah.
And then that turns out to be false.
Yep.
So Jake Fisher had an article, and there were a few things coming out of that. The first is that Trailblazers officials have left inquiring teams with the impression that Shaedon Sharpe, the number 7 pick in last year's draft, is off limits in any dialogue regarding the number 3 pick.
Untouchable.
Which I would say, if you are a Blazers fan, that probably makes you feel good, because if you had a concern about this summer, it would be that they were going to leverage their entire future to try to build around Dame. At least they have drawn the line in the sand somewhere, and they've drawn it with Shaedon Sharpe.
Yeah.
Good for them.
At least they're going to try to do the 2 timeline thing, which we have seen works so well in Golden State. So you should feel pretty good if you're.
The Thunder were doing a 2 timeline last year with Mike Muscala until they shuttled him away. That was our 2 timelines. And it was working, Andrew. I don't know why they blew it up.
Yeah.
Then Dame was on a Showtime podcast that I had never heard of before. And I didn't know Showtime had podcasts. I saw
just assume that everybody has podcasts at this point.
I guess so. He on that pod, he said, we got an opportunity asset-wise to build a team that can compete. If we can't do that, then it's a separate conversation we would have to have. Now, he also in that interview said that he expects to be in Portland this season. So I don't like, Blazers fans get very upset by the national coverage of Dame.
Yeah.
I will just say, at some point, they have to admit he is kind of like a slop factory. Like, he does not have to say these things.
Dude, I was talking about this on the Fry Pod a few weeks ago. It's like, stop. Like, he's the one generating the conversation. He's the reason why he does this every year, where it's about this time of year where he's like, you know what? I don't know about this. Not sure what's going to happen here. And then in September, we're going to get the loyalty speech from him. And we're like, oh my gosh, you know what? We just have always wanted superstars to be like this. Thank you, Dame. But he's the one who starts the conversation, and he's the one who ends it with, you know what? But I'm loyal. By golly.
And what Blazers fans would tell you is that, well, he's getting asked these questions. Like, what is he supposed to do? However,
I know.
However, okay, fine. This answer, very similar to what he said at exit interviews. So, like, maybe you just chalk that up. Hey, he's just reiterating what he said. The host also asked him about potential trade scenarios and said, let's say you could get traded to one of these 4 teams. Which would you like to go to? And he immediately answered. He said, oh, Miami, definitely. Like, instantly. He did not think he didn't have to answer that way. He said,
if you're not on the stream, I'm rolling my eyes so hard.
Those are the type of answers where I'm just like, come on, like, everything that Blazers fans I get, but there's a point where it's like, okay, he doesn't have to be that. He doesn't have to give that much information.
He has an agent. He has a PR person. He has the Blazers PR that could help him with this, where they just say, "Hey, listen, these
Just
kind of
I'm not thinking about that right now."
Yeah, are off
That's
limits. Yeah, or he could even, he could say, you know what, I'm focused on the Blazers.
Yeah, I'm focused on what we're going to do this summer. Blah blah blah. I'll think about that later.
He continues the conversation and like, well, he's just answering honestly.
Fine. I mean, he is, but like
he is, but
we can't keep saying that he's being put in these positions. Like Bradley Beal for years and years, and I know he's not on the same tier as Dame. He's not anywhere close to Dame as a player.
Yeah, but he's on Blazers East, so yeah.
Bradley Beal isn't showing up on podcasts like every couple months talking about his future. It's more us talking about it.
Yeah,
but like Beal isn't going on like PG's podcast and talking about what he's going to do in his future.
Isn't it? When is the last time you heard Bradley Beal talk?
Honestly, I cannot remember.
Yeah,
I cannot remember the last time I saw Bradley
Beal. Agree to do these. He doesn't have to agree to do these.
Yes. Anyways, I do think it's interesting because I've been listening to Blazers podcast. I was listening to Jack Ramsey's, and post lottery, the word out of like every Blazers outlet was like, they're definitely trading this pick. Do not even think about another idea. And we kind of got that with when we talked to Sean Hyken on Saturday Slam and Jam.
Yep.
I posed that question like, what do you think the chances are that they just end up having to keep the pick because there's not a deal, and they keep Dame? And he was kind of, saying that like, well, I still think that's unlikely that would happen in that scenario. It's been very interesting to watch the turn in the last week where, at least from listening to Jack Ramsey's, they're starting to get the feeling that like maybe this deal isn't out there for the third pick, which is good for Blazers fans in the sense that hopefully they are not going to give up this third pick in a deal where they're not getting equal value back, because I do think the third pick is worth a lot. That's a good asset. And trading that for, let's say, a year of Pascal Siakam with no guarantees that he's going to sign next year. And even if he did sign next year, you're signing like a 30-year-old to a 4-year max contract.
But he's probably the best guy out there that could be had for
right. If you can't get Bridges, who's on a long-term cheap deal, if you can't get Jaylen Brown, who's much younger, then Siakam's probably the most realistic option. And I personally wouldn't want my team trading a number 3 overall pick for a 30-year-old Pascal Siakam. I think he's 29 right now, but he's going to be 30 next year.
And also if it didn't work, he could just be like, all right, see ya.
Yeah. Like what if Dame gets hurt and they have to tank again and then he's just gone? So it's been interesting listening to these Blazers podcasts kind of start having to talk about this scenario, which I'm starting to feel like is going to be the most likely scenario, where they just draft Scoot Henderson, let's say, who's there at number 3, simply because they correctly see that there's not a trade that's worth it for them.
Yeah. What I would do if I were them is draft the guy that is going to look the best, the fastest. Let him play alongside Dame, because it's possible that they increase their value. It's also possible that they decrease their value. Like if Scoot Henderson gets in the league and he can't hit threes.
Or just if they draft Scoot and they keep Dame, now all of a sudden you have a even more magnified small guard problem than they had previously, because now you have Dame, Scoot, Ant, and Shaedon Sharpe, who's not like the biggest guy in the world, and you're trying to find room for all of those guys. Like it would actually help them in this scenario if Brandon Miller fell to 3.
Yeah,
that's one of the other scuttlebutts going on right now. I don't know if they're called scuttlebutts. One of the other scuttlebutts out there is that everyone is kind of convinced that the Hornets are going to take Brandon Miller.
Yeah.
Which, again, you have to remind yourself of what happened last year with Jabari. But it kind of fits the narrative that Mitch Kupchak started like immediately after the lottery when he said, we're at a point where we can start just drafting for fit. He said that for some reason. Unclear why.
The first GM of a number 2 overall pick to ever say that.
Yeah, we could draft for fit. Yeah. We don't have to worry about talent, actually. We're just going to find what we need and plug the hole.
Miller's like some bad dude. I have not gotten the impression that he's some bad guy, but the fact that
he might be the right pick at number 2.
He very
for
well
them.
could be. He very well could be the perfect fit for them and kind of unlock some things. But the fact that you're going to bring back Miles Bridges and bring in Brandon Miller, who's fair or not, has some not charges against him, but he's involved in a case that is really bad. It's just not the greatest look for the Hornets. It's not like the greatest
It's a
PR
terrible look
spin for them.
If they bring back Miles Bridges, it is going to be a story, and they're going to have to respond, and they're going to do a terrible job responding.
They're going to do a bad job. And I guess
all teams do a terrible job with this.
If you're Brandon Miller, it might be the best situation for you because no one would talk about him. No one would all talk about Miles.
I do think it would be bad though when you consider that the Hornets might be getting sold this summer at some point. Yeah. Like if you're an incoming ownership group, you would hope that you would get to be making those decisions. Because I imagine that there are people who would want to buy the Hornets who would say, no, there's no way I'm bringing back Miles Bridges on this team. I want to start a new era of Charlotte's Hornets basketball. I don't want any of this baggage associated with this team at all. I want to establish my culture. You would imagine that there are owners who would want that say in these decisions. So it's very weird that all of this is happening without a new owner in place when there's an expectation there's going to be a new owner very, very soon.
Yeah.
More
Scuttlebutt?
Well, actually, I did see a conspiracy theory on ESPN that all of the Brandon Miller to Charlotte noise is a conspiracy where Jonathan Givony is helping out Mike Schmitz with the Blazers by letting everyone know that Brandon Miller is going 2, so that there's an assumption Scoot Henderson will be there at 3 to jack up the price of the 3rd pick.
Wow.
What do you think about that?
I would just go ahead and assume that there's just a lot of stuff going on with Givony, so I like it.
Very cool. Now, along that same lines, Mark Spears tweeted out last night that Pooh Jeter is retiring from playing. He was with the G League Ignite. He was one of Scoot Henderson's teammates last year, and he is taking over as assistant GM for the Trailblazers' new G League team. They're one of the few teams that does not have a G League team. They're about to get one, and Pooh Jeter is taking over. And then Sean Highkin said, of note, Pooh Jeter was in attendance at Scoot Henderson's workout over the weekend. They were teammates with the Ignite, and Scoot talked about how important he was as a mentor to him. Kind of interesting. If they are planning on just taking Scoot if he's there, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Because
that's what I would do if I were them. I would just take the best player available and figure it out, whether you think it's Scoot or Amen Thompson, or if you think it's Cam Whitmore, whoever it is, just take them.
I would too. I will acknowledge though that if Brandon Miller fell, it's a much easier immediate sell in that you could imagine, okay, maybe if he does come in and is immediately good, you can keep doing this kind of 2 timelines thing. Scoot feels like a clean break from that just because of the positional overlap with Dame and the fact that I know that he has a giant wingspan, but he's 6'2" or whatever. That is
short. He's short.
That would be a tiny backcourt. I'm assuming he'd be coming off the bench in that scenario if they keep Simons. And maybe they have to trade Simons if they did draft Scoot. But I do feel like drafting Scoot would show me that they're very serious about moving forward because they understand the ramifications of drafting a 6'2" point guard.
Yeah. Yeah. I would still do it if they believe that he's the best. And I now that they have Mike Schmitz and have a good scouting department, I trust those guys just to go make the highest upside pick. And
yeah, that's the part of this that I've always felt Blazers fans haven't they've downplayed it too much, which is the fact that their scouting department is vastly different from what it was under Neil Olshey. They have invested so much more in both domestic scouts and international scouts. And they're a legit, they've got a legit eye for talent, I would say, in comparison to the way they used to draft. Now, they still used to draft pretty well, but they never drafted international players. They didn't have a G League team, so they didn't have a lot of ways to engage in player development outside of trying to get guys on the main team or sending them to another team's G League. So it feels like they are getting more serious about just the entire player development infrastructure. And that, if I was a Blazers fan, would make me feel a lot better about them going this route, because it feels like, okay, we actually have the people in place who could make this work long term, even though you acknowledge that they're probably going to be bad for a little while if they did end up trading Dame.
Mm-hmm.
They've been bad for 2 seasons, though. Okay, next scuttlebutt. We kind of knew this, but I'm just repeating it. The Rockets are fielding trade interest for the 4th overall selection. And in general, Jake Fisher said kind of every team in the top 10 outside of like San Antonio is exploring the idea of trading the pick.
Sure.
And I don't think it's because, and on some level, I get it. We say this every single year. But I actually do think this draft is playing into that, not because it's a bad draft, but because it feels a little flat. Like once you get beyond the top 2 or 3 guys, depending on how you feel about the guys around 4 or 5. But maybe let's say around like 7 or 8, it does start to feel like it flattens out a little bit. And the guy you could potentially get at 7 could also fall to 12 or something. So I'm still waiting for something to hit there. You know, you tend to think that it's just going to end up with everyone just staying where they are, because draft picks just don't get traded that often, like on draft night.
Mm-hmm.
But it still gets me excited, Andrew.
Yeah.
I don't know, though, and this is a bigger
Houston
question.
believes that they can get a veteran point guard
with the 4th pick, or just in general?
Free agency, whether that's James Harden or Fred VanVleet. If they believe they can get one of those guys, what are you doing making this pick?
Well, and so not only what are you doing making that pick, but Rafael Barlow reported that he thinks, regardless of what they do in free agency, it would be very likely they take a Thompson twin. And everyone's been talking about Amen Thompson as like the fit there, the guy that they're most interested in when other reporters talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
That would be strange.
It would be really strange.
I would get it in terms of like, no matter what you do, you're taking BPA. But at the same time, if you come into next season and you're trying to find developmental minutes for a guy who definitely needs the ball in his hand.
Yeah.
Like maybe more than anyone else in this class,
right.
Amen Thompson needs the ball in his hand, and you're trying to play him alongside James Harden or trying to find him minutes off the bench where he can run the second unit. I don't know if that's like the best developmental path.
And also, like, Jalen Green isn't some like incredible off-ball player.
He's going to need to be.
So, I mean, that's where I'm just like, I don't know.
That's where Fred VanVleet actually makes a little bit more sense, because at least Fred can play off ball and is cool with that. Whereas it seems like James Harden wants to go back to Houston Harden and play like that again.
Yeah. You also wonder if Fred is going to be willing, who's made an all-star team, come to Houston and just be like, yeah, I'll just run off ball for you guys that won
for all these like 20-year-old guys,
20 games last year. Like, I don't know. It's just a situation.
The other thing I've been thinking about with Harden specifically, or if they do Harden and Amen, or even if they just bring in Amen, you have to imagine KPJ's minutes are going down. And I'm no KPJ fan. Like I'm not a huge fan of his game. However, he was absolutely Houston's best 3-point shooter last year. It wasn't close. He was the only guy who shot over 36% from 3. He did it on a high volume.
Yeah.
He was their best 3-point shooter. If they go into next season and you have Şengün, who's a non-shooter, you were putting so much in Jabari and Jalen Green taking huge leaps from 3. They have to take huge leaps from 3, or you're starting to get into like a really serious issue. Now, I would imagine that those guys are going to get much cleaner looks, regardless, like just as long as they bring in a point guard. Even if it's Amen Thompson, I think they'll get better looks than they were getting last year with Kevin Porter Jr.
Yeah.
But still, they have to prove it. They actually have to make shots at some point.
Yeah.
Because if you have Amen and Şengün in your starting lineup, two guys who you anticipate will be non-shooters for the foreseeable future. Maybe one of them develops eventually. Boy, Andrew.
I'm just so interested to see what happens. Fred VanVleet really want to leave the Raptors? Who's like it's a good organization to go to the Rockets, which people behind the scenes, everybody jokes about them. Everybody does. It's going to have to be like crazy money, and it just be like, hey, you know what?
Well, we're
just going to go get a big fat check from Houston, and if it doesn't work out, I'll force a trade.
Well, we saw that with Monty Williams. Like sometimes when you're a bad team, you just gotta pony up to make something happen.
Yeah, Monty, please fix this. He's like, no thanks. So we'll pay you $7 million a year. No thanks. He's like, it would take 12 for me to even consider it, and they're like, done. And he's like, what?
Yeah,
okay.
I guess it's great for him. It is such a long-term contract. I think Monty Williams is a way better coach than this, but it does give me flashes of like when John Gruden went to the Raiders on like this 10-year, $100 million deal.
Yeah.
And like as soon as you started to have questions about it, and this is happening at Texas A&M too with Jimbo Fisher, like as soon as you have questions about it, it's like, I don't know if we really can get out of this. Like it has to work. It has to work because
you have to give it time. And it really sucks for the Pistons that they got pick 5. I think you can get a good player at pick 5, but boy, they need a way to step up, and I'm not sure that it's on the roster today, and I'm not sure that pick 5 can get them where they need to go. There's an immense amount of pressure on Cade Cunningham to be a really good player.
Definitely.
I mean,
he needs to be, if not generational, he needs to be like a clear all-star.
Yeah, clear multi-time all-star in the similar mold to like Shea. Like he needs to emerge as like a Shea type of player.
Which is especially for this upcoming season, that's a big ask for a guy going into his third season.
Yeah,
where he didn't play in the second season.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask, but I agree. Like they kind of need that type of a jump from someone to get back to respectability.
Yeah. It's because it's a big leap to go from where they were last year to even the play-in. I mean, think about it. The Heat were a play-in team in the East.
Oh, by the way, since you just brought it up,
I brought it up.
What?
I said I brought it up.
James Edwards III.
Yep.
He wrote an article about, or maybe he was answering a mailbag. Anyways, he brought up a trade idea for the 5th pick.
Yeah.
And it was sending Bogdanovich to OKC.
Yeah.
Along with the 5th pick.
He and I did a podcast about this on
you did?
Team. Yeah.
Okay. So I believe the deal was number 12, and then he was kind of vague on the picks. He said like a 2024 pick and a 2025 pick. Yeah. So basically giving 3 first-round picks to move all the way up to 5.
Yeah.
And you take back Bogdanovich, who you probably could trade for another first.
Yeah.
Maybe that would even be a 3-team deal.
Yeah, I think the Thunder would like to, push him to a different team, although he'd be incredibly useful to this Thunder team.
Yeah, he would.
I just don't think they would want him because of the amount of guys they need to develop still.
One, I feel like that's actually pretty accurate value. I do think it would take the 12 plus 2 additional first, depending on what those firsts are.
So when we talked about it, he first when he was writing this article, he was texting me about it. He was like, "What do you think about the Thunder's 12?" And it pick when the first iteration was Rockets and Clippers 24 picks for Bogdanovich and 5.
They're 24 picks?
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I don't know if I have a guy yet at 5, but if they have a guy at 5 and you're able to use some of those 24 picks, which So now, if this happened, I would absolutely buy into the idea that it's a weak draft in 24. I would pivot
We
super
would be
quick.
throwing that draft out the window if they did this.
I would immediately pivot.
Yeah. Yeah, the draft sucks anyways. Who cares? We've got.
Yeah, who cares? Yeah, I would. Why would you even want to pick?
Great draft, of course. Of course, we would do this.
Yeah, I would I think that's. I would say I think that's fair value. It feels like a lot, but I think when you factor in the way people are talking about that draft, the fact that the Rockets pick can only be as high as 5 in that draft, that's the best it can be. The Clippers pick, like, we'll see what happens with the Clippers. I just, even as they're getting older, even though the fact they're over the second apron, I still wouldn't bet right now that they're going to be like a bottom 8 team.
I don't think they will be either.
But let's say you in that scenario, like worst case scenario, you give up like the number 5 pick in next year's draft, the number, let's say 12 pick in next year's draft, and the 12th pick in this year's draft.
3
to
lottery.
Move up to 5.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
It's a lot.
If you just set aside how people are perceiving next year's draft.
Yeah.
But if there was someone that they absolutely loved, they're going to have to figure out something with those 24 picks at some point. So
totally. I think they're in play. I'm not like reporting that, but I am. I would be very shocked if they were not in play for the right asset.
Yeah. And Andrew's not reporting it. I'm more than willing to report it.
I'll report it right now. It's like a big kind of like duh, of course.
No, it's not what my supposed to say.
Who would you take? Let's say you're on the clock and
obviously
Nyama, Brandon Miller, Scoot, and Amin Thompson are all gone. 5.
I would say my default pick right now is probably Jarris Walker.
Yeah, I think that's. I think that you and Thunder Nation are aligned on that.
Yeah, I like the idea that similar to Bam Adebayo, and I'm not saying that they're similar skill sets, but similar to Bam, Jarris showed a lot more in high school that he was not asked to do in Houston, specifically like as a passer and playmaker. And so when you factor in that, the thing that worries me about Jarris is that even though he's huge, it doesn't seem like he plays super physical. Like in terms of his rim attempts and things like that.
Offensively, he doesn't. Yeah. Offensively, he's not very physical.
Yeah, like he'll settle for floaters and stuff. Now, maybe you bring him into OKC and you know he can become a more physical player offensively, because I do think that would be nice to have. Defensively, though, I would be pretty excited about him. Outside of Jarris, would you say Anthony Black? Would that be your answer at 5? Would you give up? This is the ultimate test of your Anthony Black love. If you would be willing to give up 3 theoretical lottery picks for Anthony Black.
I think I would, just because I think he's going to be the best player
in the draft.
In the draft, better than
wow.
No, I think he's the best player left on the board that is like going to have like the longest career, like biggest impact on the NBA. And I'll admit the fit is not clean. Certainly.
It's almost as dirty.
It's a little dirty. It's a little messy. It's definitely hey, we believe in our coaching staff and our ability to teach guys to shoot, Yeah. But the upside of a guy that thinks the game at his level is pretty tremendous. And I just think he's the best player available. And if I'm the Thunder, I'm still just, and if I'm picking in the lottery with my own pick, and then certainly if I'm trading up, I'm taking the best player available. Like, I'm not really considering fit at this point. Like, I'm just taking best player available. And I think he fits into what the Thunder want to do. Like, long term, they want to play this, musically based offense where it's just like, it's not this like pattern, it's all rhythm. And so like he fits into that so well. Like, he can make reads so well. He can put pressure on the rim. He will shoot. He's not a great shooter, but he will shoot. And if he can improve that shot, like, boy, like, we're talking about another all-star type of player for OKC.
You know what? That reminds me of something. Last week we had Ben Pfeiffer on, and I was asking Ben I've been a little lukewarm on this draft just in terms of the Thunder. Like I generally actually really like this draft. I like the prospects, but I've been having a hard time finding like the exact guy I want on the Thunder.
Yeah.
And I feel like something he said really clicked for me because he loves this draft. And he said, if it does have a weakness, it's that there's not a ton of high feel prospects.
Yeah.
And I realized, that's why. Like
that's why we don't like the draft that much.
That's why I've been struggling to find like the perfect guy. And Anthony Black is one of those guys. Like he's definitely a high field prospect.
Yeah.
So I would certainly understand it. It would terrify me, but a lot of things have terrified me that have worked out. So I'd probably be fine with it. Is there anyone though?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I really want to know.
Yeah.
And by the way, going back to Jarris Walker, I actually don't know if I like Jarris Walker enough where I'd be willing to give up that
it's a lot
big of
to
an
give
offer.
Up. It's a lot to give up for him.
The
reason I would do it is the defensive upside that exists there with this team and his ability to kind of defend 4s and 5s.
Yeah.
But offensively, it's not ideal. And he is a good passer. That's great. I don't know what he does to score. I don't know. I just don't trust the shot all that much. And he profiles way more as like a role player than a guy like Anthony Black would. I think Anthony Black can handle the ball a little bit more.
Andrew, with this new CBA, we kind of need some role players. Okay, we can't give 5 maxes out, Andrew. We'll create a third apron.
At some point, they're going to trade somebody.
Don't say that.
I just think it's going to happen at some point.
Don't say that.
And I just think having like a 6'7" guard, I mean, he's a freaking amazing perimeter defender. And he's a lot stronger than he looks. There's just so much to like about what he can do. If you want to play like an all switchy lineup, like boom, like he's there. I think he's going to be.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough Anthony Black talk from you. Sorry. Okay. Let's say they do this. They move up to 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's all hypothetical. Is there anyone where if they drafted him, you would actually be upset?
At 5?
Yeah.
So
I don't think there really is. Like, I know you don't love Cam Whitmore, but if they thought that Cam Whitmore was like a great play finisher and he's just like a huge body and he's going to make a lot of sense for this Thunder team, even if he's not like this amazing processor of the game, like it wouldn't upset me. I'd be like, yeah let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this all along. Like, I will believe it when I see it when they draft a play finisher in the lottery. But if they do that this year, like I'm not gonna be upset about it. Like if they took him or Hendricks or somebody like that was just like purely play finisher type of guy, and Cam's got like upside as a scorer, definitely, that these other guys don't have. Like he's got tremendous upside as a scorer compared to like Jarris or even Hendricks and Anthony Black and all those guys. Like, yeah, I mean, I'd buy into it. I mean, the Thunder don't have like a scoring, like true wing,
right?
You know? So I think I would be very intrigued. I would be surprised by it just because he just did not pass.
But you wouldn't have the reaction that people had when Darius Baisley was selected.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think the Thunder have created a team that can really take on any kind of player.
He is Cam Whitmore, he is so much bigger in my mind than he is in real life. He's under 6'6" without shoes.
Yeah.
His wingspan is under 6'9". He's not like a particularly big player. I'm looking at his
he's a wing. He's a wing.
But even still, like, I mean, J-Dub has a 7'2" wingspan, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. He is crazy strong, though.
He is. Oh, you know who he profiles similarly to? Darius Miller. Remember when he played on the Thunder?
Yeah.
You really have to go back. You have to go.
Like size-wise, you mean?
Yeah. This is just physical comparisons. Grant Williams, he's very similar to in size.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I mean, he's definitely strong as heck. He's fast. He's crazy athletic. He can shoot it. He's really young. He might be the youngest lottery pick If Koulibaly doesn't get selected in the lottery, there's a lot to like, certainly.
So would you agree that if they did move up for 5, there's basically there's no one that we would be upset about?
No. I mean, there's really nobody in there that I would say I'd be mad. Like Cason Wallace, Grady Dick, Anthony Black, Taylor Hendricks,
Yeah,
Jarvis
okay. If
Walker.
they moved up to 5 to get Grady Dick,
I would be surprised.
I would say, did you really need to do that? Did we
But we
really
thought
have
the
to go
same
up?
thing about Josh at the time when the reporting came out that he was definitely going to be taken by Golden State.
Yeah.
And so perhaps Orlando, who is going to be like dead set on him, or the Pacers are dead set on him. We just don't know. We look at these boards and they all kind of look the same for the most part. But when you get to draft night, teams don't care about this stuff. Every team has a different board that looks way different. We think of like draft value as like so different than what it actually ends up being. Like J-Dub taking it at 12, Giddey taking it at 6, like all of those felt like a reach. But then when you get the intel afterwards, it's like, oh, okay, well, NBA teams were thinking about this a lot differently than all these like guys that are making these mock drafts. And so the value proposition for some of these guys is just going to look so different a month from now, where we look back and we'll be surprised that so-and-so went higher or this guy went lower or whatever.
A couple more scuttlebutts. Jonathan Wasserman tweeted this morning that prior to Dariq Whitehead's recent foot surgery, he's met with multiple late lotto teams and teams with 2+ first rounders per source. Instead of workouts, he's had film sessions, meeting with head coaches, execs, med staff. Just wanted to point that out because it said late lotto. We're in the late lotto. Just mentioning it. Dariq Whitehead.
But Dariq had surgery again.
He did, but there was no refracture. That's what Jonathan said. But that sounds good. Better than there being a refracture. The other thing I was going to the last thing here is Tim Cato had an article talking about the Kyrie, LeBron, whatever that was.
Sure.
And he said pretty definitively in that article that like the 10th pick is going to get moved.
Yeah.
He did not. The way I don't remember the exact wording, but I came away from that feeling like, oh, they're definitely moving that pick. And we've been talking mostly about moving up, like moving from 12 to 10. However, if Dallas is wanting to get rid of a 10th pick, like what are they going to do with a 12th pick? So I wonder what you would need to do to just get the 10th pick.
Would it be willing to give up? I mean, I think that they would want multiple picks, similar to the trade to get 11 last year,
to then move in other deals.
Yeah, so they could just have it.
Or is it just trying to get off of money? Because they could open a lot more space if they could get someone to absorb one of these contracts, whether it's Bertans or Tim Hardaway.
I mean, that's where the Thunder. I mean, if I'm the Thunder, I would definitely. I mean, I would think that the Bertans trade would just make so much sense. So much sense for them.
That's how I feel, and I feel like, okay, maybe you have to give something extra, but taking on Bertans' contract is kind of really helping out the Mavs.
Oh,
that shouldn't be overlooked in this deal, that you are taking on Bertans' money, who's not just next year. It is also the year after that at around like $17 million.
Yeah, I would, and I just think he could actually help the Thunder as a role-playing.
Oh, you believe in Bertans?
I do. I do actually believe that he could help OKC. I think that he is, if he was put in Mark Daigneault's system, I think he would do some stuff. I think that he would.
I'm sure he'd do something.
I think he would knock down shots at a high level, and I think people would be surprised. I just think these kind of guys can be resurrected. We're seeing it with Duncan Robinson right now, who just like a month and a half ago, people were like, man, I can't be able to even get off of this contract. Like, what a terrible deal.
Yeah.
And now he's been awesome. So I just think that you can, these guys, like, I don't think Davis Bertans has forgot how to shoot the basketball. He just needs to be put into the right kind of system. And to have a weapon like that, I think it'd be pretty great. I think he would be pretty great with OKC, and he would allow them to help them get the 10th pick too, just because the money is just so high.
Yeah.
So high.
Yeah, I think I'd be willing to do if it's just picks, I would be willing to do the Utah pick next year and take on Bertans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Top 10 protected, and then it decreases from there. That's like, I mean, it's a decent pick. It could very well be a late lottery pick next year. I don't know if that's enough for them, but I hesitate to offer too much more than that.
Yeah.
Unless they just love like this area of the draft, which, to be fair, there's a lot of guys that I'd be perfectly happy with.
Yeah. Yeah, his contract becomes fully guaranteed if he plays 75% of the regular season games in 23-24.
But I thought his final year is a player option. So how does that work?
He has it's $5 million guaranteed in 24-25, fully guaranteed. 75% of the games.
Oh, he's not going to play 75% of the games. So maybe that's actually not enough, because that's actually pretty easy to get off of, where you only have to pay him $5 million in that final year.
That's why, like, a 12 for Bertans and 10, if like you just need to jump a couple spots,
yeah,
would make some sense. And
so
then,
actually the Tim Hardaway Jr. contract, even though he's perceived as a better player, his is way more committed because it's just full guarantees the next 2 years, $18 million next year, and then $16 million in the final year.
yeah, I'd be less willing to take on Hardaway Jr. I just don't. I think he would. Maybe the Thunder would find some way to move him, or I don't know. I'd be less bullish on that situation, just because he's more of a high usage player than Bertans is.
Yeah,
and Bertans is really only 1 year, and you can waive him. You know, that's pretty compelling, and you could just hold him out of 26% of the games to start the season, and then you
exactly.
Then you put him in the lineup, and you're like, all right, thank you. Welcome to the team, Thomas.
Even if he was playing well, I don't know if there's a team better equipped to not play him in 75% of the games than OKC, just because they have so many guys they could rotate in.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, one more thing I want to talk about.
I got it.
This is sort of related to Derek Lively.
Yeah.
Okay? I've been thinking about how I've been thinking about this draft. And I think I've been way too focused on, we need to find the guy at 12 that completes this perfect starting five lineup in my head.
Yeah.
You know? And I think this is what leads us to hyper focus on guys like Jarris Walker or Taylor Hendricks, where it's like, I just want to have the perfect starting five where everyone is complementary, sort of like what we're seeing with Denver right now.
Sure.
Who have created that kind of perfect synergy of five players in their starting lineup. I also think back to the Chris Paul Hornets team that had like Peja, Mo Pete, David West, and Tyson Chandler, along with Chris Paul.
Yeah.
It was just like a perfectly constructed starting five. And I think I'm a little too obsessed with that as I think about the draft.
Yeah.
When you look at the other teams who made it to the Final Four this year, all of them, other than Denver, use multiple starting lineups in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know, the
Sure.
Boston rotated in Rob Williams or Derek White. The Miami Heat just started Kevin Love in game 2 after previously having not started him in game 1. And then the Lakers started like a bunch of different guys. Now that was maybe more due to them just like throwing anything at the wall to see what works. But I think it is true that you need to be able to play in multiple ways when you get to the playoffs. And so maybe I shouldn't be as hyper focused on what the perfect starting lineup is going to look at. And that kind of brings me to Derek Lively, because when we've talked about Derek Lively before, you've mentioned how you don't think they would do it, in part because it feels like just a conventional pick. It kind of feeds into the narrative that Chet isn't a center long term, even though we both think that the team considers Chet a center long term. And it feeds into the narrative like, oh, Chet's not strong enough. You need to have another big body in there. And for that reason, we've kind of been averse to it.
Yeah.
However, Andrew, if the Thunder believe that his shooting is real, and again, he shot 2 of 14 from 3 at Duke. However,
real. I believe
that's on the EYBL circuit, in which he was playing on the court with Jalen Duren. I remembered who it was. He shot a lot more threes. He was not asked to do that as much in Duke. To be fair, he was not good when he was asked to do it. He got a lot of those 14 threes. A lot of those were wide open threes at the top of the key that he just missed. However, if they think that the shooting is real, what is conventional about having 2 7-foot rim protectors who can both stretch the floor? I would argue that's one of the most unconventional things we've seen. I don't know if there's a team that's ever had 2 7-foot rim protectors who can both stretch the floor. I mean, you think about Cleveland, like Jared Allen. Okay, maybe they have 2 rim protectors, but neither of them can shoot the 3 yet. Karl Anthony Towns and Naz Reid, like they can both shoot the 3, but neither of them are really rim protectors. There is something unconventional about taking Derek Lively and putting him on this team. And you don't have to start him. Like if I break out of this idea where I'm so hyper-focused on the starting 5 and just think about the flexibility you would have with another 7-foot rim protector who can stretch the floor on the team, whether he's playing with Chet or not, it does kind of get me a little bit excited. Again, they have to believe in the shot. And if they don't believe in the shot, I'm a little less enthused about just the idea of having another big who's a good rim protector, because I do feel like you can find those guys elsewhere. But I don't know. I've been thinking about that lately. I'm not saying he's definitely my guy at 12.
Yeah.
But just imagine that lineup if it all worked out, where your shooting is coming from your bigs, and then you have all these guys who are creating rim pressure surrounding them.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
It'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely talk yourself into it.
I just did.
And I think it would be cool to have him, but again, I'll believe it when I see it, with them drafting somebody that's not like a decision maker and like it's just like a play finisher.
Yeah.
But I would be into it if they decided to do that, just because I think he could help them and fill in gaps for them in ways that they just don't have right now. So,
because just imagine having your like traditional lineup, which in this case, even though it's like not super traditional, but having Chet at the 5, and then, whether it's J-Dub at the 4 or even someone, like JRE or whoever at the 4, it's kind of like the traditional starting 5. Then you can pivot to this small ball unit where you have Kenrich at the 5, but then you can also pivot to this double big lineup where you have Lively and Chet on the floor. I just like the idea, thinking about in the future in the playoffs, of having multiple completely different lineups that you could throw at a team.
Yeah.
That gets me excited.
Yeah, we saw with Boston, like Boston's a great example of just like being able to play every kind of way. I guess my only question is like, what if Lively doesn't shoot? Like, couldn't you just go find like another rim running big?
Yes. And that's why all of this is kind of dependent on them really believing in the shot.
Yeah.
Because there have been bigs who have shot well in pre-draft practices and pro days, and then they just never shot in the league. I mean, we always believe Steven Adams could probably shoot threes, and he just never did it. So, yeah, you would want to feel good about that aspect before you committed to it. But I don't know. I'm just saying, if they drafted him, I would immediately get it, and not for the reason that I think a lot of outsiders might think. Like, I feel like a lot of people would view that pick as like, oh, they need a bigger body next to Chet. They don't believe Chet is like can handle a center load long term.
Yeah, I don't believe that that's correct.
Right. Yeah, I don't either.
Because they could have, instead of taking Jang, and a lot of Thunder fans might be like, "Oh my gosh, I wish they would have done this." Like they could have just
Jalen
taken
Duren,
and
then next year they could have taken Derek Lively, reunited teammates, put Chet on the bench, start Lively. Have you made your final decision on Bilal Coulibaly?
No.
No.
I'm kind of annoyed by the whole situation, if I'm being honest.
So here are my thoughts.
Yeah.
As a defensive prospect, I absolutely get it.
Sure.
I'm very convinced. I was watching some of his highlights. He kind of reminds me of Herb Jones. The number of plays where he just out of nowhere closes out on a three-point shooter and either gets a block or heavily contests them, where he like started the play facing away from them and then is able to get back and contest them in a real way. Those are kind of like the classic Herb Jones plays.
Yeah.
Like block three-pointer. Those got me really excited, especially when you think about how the Thunder played defense last year, where they would tend to sink into the paint and they wanted their guys to have these aggressive closeouts. He seems like he'd be really good at that, even acknowledging that their defense is probably going to change dramatically with Chet next year. The athleticism he shows on the defensive end, like chasing guys around, really exciting. Everything on the defensive end, I'm like fully on board.
Yeah.
I haven't been convinced yet that his offensive game is thundery in any way. His shot is really slow.
Yeah, slow. It's mechanical. There's some people that really like the shot. I just can't get there.
The other thing is that we talk about feel, everyone brings up because if you look at what he did with it's Metro 92, right? Or is it Metro?
Metropolitans
92. His like overall season long stats aren't amazing. So people will point to like the under 21 league.
Yeah.
Even at that league where he was scoring like over 20 points per game, he had a negative assist to turnover ratio.
Yeah.
Which to me does not scream like high field prospect. And then when you read more about him, yes, he had the turnover issues. He can be very like wild on drives, like that lead to a lot of charges. I don't know if I buy that Bilal offensively really fits the Thunder at all, really. Like, I get that he could potentially be a good cutter for the Thunder, but I don't buy that he's going to be able to stretch the floor long term. I mean, in addition to his shot being really slow, I've been reading multiple scouting reports that suggest that he's also been like very hesitant over the past, with Metro 92 or even before that, with taking those shots. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty torn on it, and the more I read about it, the less I'm convinced that like the promise is definitely from the Thunder.
Yeah.
I know that's what's out there right now, and like I said, like if you look at him physically, like he has a super long wingspan. He looks very athletic, especially compared to the rest of the Thunder team.
He is. He's a great athlete. Yeah.
Defensively, there are so many things that, yes, I get for the Thunder. But offensively, like people get mad at you for bringing up like Anthony Black because of his offensive fit. Like, why are people not getting mad at bringing up Bilal Coulibaly for his offensive fit? Like, how is he a better fit than someone like Anthony Black or all of these other guys that we've been talking about who might have questionable shots? Like, at least Anthony Black is like a high level decision maker.
Yeah.
And I've read nothing to suggest that that's what Bilal's game is offensively. The argument would be he's super young. The growth that he's made over this last year is like exponential. Yeah. And what we're seeing right now in the playoffs is kind of the peek into what his future could possibly be, where he's really stepped up and had these really good games in meaningful games. Mm-hmm. I get that. That just feels so risky to me because you keep shrinking the sample size down. And at some point, we're talking about like a couple games that you're really selling me on.
Yeah.
And I think about if the NBA draft happened like 2 weeks after March Madness, how different we would have felt about some of those prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would Jordan Hawkins be like way higher up just because, Connecticut won the tournament? He's this great movement shooter, but we've had, weeks and now months to think about it. And people have broken down his game in different ways and, come to the conclusion like he's an amazing movement shooter. I don't know if I can guarantee you he's going to give you a lot else, in the other parts of his game. Bilal, on the other hand, is having like his amazing March Madness tournament run right before the draft. He's not going to get that period where people reflect on his game for a really long time and think about it in incredible depth. Like, it's just this hype train that just keeps going. And I think we're all aware that there could be recency bias at play, but like that really scares me, that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be mad if they draft him because, again, I think defensively he would fit incredibly, and he would probably be able to get on the court as a rookie because of his defense alone. I just don't buy that his offensive game is some clean fit with the Thunder, and I actually think it would be an issue. Like, I think Ousmane Dieng offensively makes more sense to me offensively with the Thunder than Bilal does.
I agree. And I also just wonder, Bilal's a project. He's a project in the NBA. I think to jump up another level is going to take a lot. I just wonder about having all these kind of like nebulous projects. Like, maybe you're just like, hey, we're just like throw these like high level projects out there, and whoever is great, and whoever's not, who cares? And that's probably the mindset. And I get it. I just think it's hard to develop a lot of guys all at one time, especially as the team's getting better. I just think it's a really tough thing to do at a really high level. And with the Thunder, maybe they're the team that's best equipped to do it just because they have their G League team literally playing in the same building as their, NBA team, and they can cycle these guys in and out. And that's great. I just wonder at some point, like, especially if you're drafting in the lottery, can you take somebody that has such a low floor? Because he probably has like the lowest floor, highest ceiling, like the biggest difference in this draft. Like, I can't think of anybody else in the lottery that I think has a lower floor than Bilal does. Because when you look at,
it's tough because I do still think his floor. I'm not saying these guys play alike, but someone like Matisse Thybulle, where like a really good defensive player, you never feel like his offensive game gets fully developed. Like, I think he's could stick in the league for his defense alone, regardless of what happens on the offensive side of the ball. And I think you could even make the argument:
is Thybulle a top 8 rotation player for the Thunder? If he's
no, absolutely not. And they're not similar players. But let's say Herb Jones. Like, if you knew you could get Herb Jones at 12 back in his draft, there would probably be a decent amount of teams that would take that.
Sure,
absolutely, even with his offensive limitations. And I know he shot well his rookie year, but like long term, I do think people are worried about what he's going to be able to provide offensively. Yeah. And we've seen it in this playoffs where if you're a great defender, but you can't do a lot offensively, you might get played off the court. Like, Jared Vanderbilt just wasn't able to play at a certain point because he wasn't able to bring enough offensively. And so even if I like
just make decisions as an offensive player, he's just a play finisher only.
Right. So even if I like Bilal's defensive upside, I do worry you could get to a point where that defensive upside isn't just you're not going to get the advantage of it in the playoffs because he could hurt you so much offensively.
Yeah.
Like, no one is guarding him from 3 next year, like, at all.
No.
And I just don't see the upside with his shot. Like, maybe if he was taking a much higher volume, and his shot volume just in general is super low. Yeah. I was reading the scouting report from Coach Spins. Mm-hmm. He was comparing his like field goal attempts, it was per 100 or whatever, to like current guys in the NBA. And he has the offensive usage, or he has had the offensive usage of guys like Isaac Okoro.
Yeah.
Now, that has changed in the recent this recent stretch in the playoffs, but again, you're shrinking it down to like these couple of games and trying to sell me on that, and I just get scared from that. You're taking such a huge bet on such a small sample when it comes to his offensive game.
Yeah.
Defense, I get it. On board.
Yeah. There's a lot of concerning things about him to me. And
now Wemby thinks he should go top 5.
I think the hype is a little out of control right now. That's all.
I just want people, when they get super hyped, to at least be willing to step back and say, we really haven't seen anything like this where a guy is rising not because of like workouts or something. He's rising because he's very fortunate to be playing meaningful games like right before the draft. And to his credit, he is doing awesome in those games. But it is still very unique where we would never do this with March Madness. Like everyone kind of knows going in, like, oh, there's going to be guys who have huge tournaments and we're going to get way excited about them. But then all the hype's going to eventually come back down. Right now, it just feels like a hot air balloon and it's just going up into the stratosphere, Andrew. And no one's there. Just like pull on it a little bit and just like, hey, can we just bring it back down a little bit?
Yeah. I feel like our basketball imaginations are just taking hold.
For sure. And there's good reason because of the defensive thing, like his athleticism. Like there are reasons to get really excited.
Yeah. He definitely has tools to be a super high level role player where he's just like the Swiss Army knife of a defender. If he can clean up the shot and if the shot can get faster, like those are like the two things that I worry about most. Like clean it up, make it not like 3 different motions, but one fluid motion. If he could do that, because he's been attacking closeouts and all that during this run. I get it. He's been a lot better. Then he profiles as like a Mikal Bridges type of guy. And if he could become that, then heck yeah, you take that at 12.
And if they do take him at 12, I'll feel the same way as I would if they took Derek Lively at 12, which is like they must believe in the shot. Like they must believe
the shot. Yeah.
That they can fix it enough to make it functional.
Yeah. I am skeptical. That's where I'm at with him. Is I'm skeptical. Also, just because I think there are good players left there that I think could help sooner and that still have upside. Obviously, Buffkin, who's playing with.
Yeah, we haven't talked since the pictures came out of him and SGA
and Chet sitting down behind Buffkin.
And Chet. I didn't see Chet in that picture.
He's sitting down, hiding himself behind Kobe Buffkin. Yep. So, just saying, like those, we got Buffkin boys on the roster.
Kind of worrying me that Chet. I'm looking at the picture now. It does kind of worry me that Chet is able to hide himself so well behind a 6'4" guard that I didn't even notice him the first time.
Yeah, I would say he's 6'5".
Really?
Look at him next to Shea.
Let me see. Let me check this. Let me look at this again. Yeah, but Shea's got a little bend in one of his knees.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to say 6'6", but I think he's... That got me excited. Definitely. I think Buffkin would be awesome. I think it'd be awesome if they could come off the bench. I think that he could be a ball handler. He could play off ball. He likes to play defense. It's a lot of exciting things. And he has a pretty high floor, I think.
Yeah, another guy where don't worry about the starting 5. Like just
take him, and he can close some games or not. You know, he could probably be a guy that starts the second quarter, has like your on-ball scorer, and he's a good passer, lefty, cool name. He's got a lot going for him.
I don't think there's anything that's going to kind of break you off of this Buffkin obsession.
I don't think so.
I don't think anything can steer you
so
away.
well-rounded. I just think that wherever he goes, he's going to help somebody. I kind of have doubts that the Thunder would take him, but wherever he goes, I think he's going to help whatever team. Like if he went to the Pelicans, I could think he'd help them quite a bit. Or if he somehow fell to the Lakers or the Heat or the Warriors, I think he's helping those teams.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a better chance he falls to those teams than it is that the Thunder take him at 12. But I just think having a guy that can do so many different things as an offensive player, plus he does dig in on defense. Like, yeah. The only thing he's just real skinny.
Yeah, that does worry me a bit.
But
It's because of size for position. I mean, they did draft Trey Man, so it's not like a hard and fast rule.
Yeah, and there's and outside of Bilal, as far as like size for position, like who else are you taking there? I guess Leonard Miller.
Grady Dick, he's got size for position.
Yeah, he's probably not going to fall to 12.
We'll see, Andrew.
And I'm also not convinced that if he did fall to 12, that he'd necessarily be the guy the Thunder would take.
Yeah,
I would actually be a little surprised if they did take Grady at 12.
Yeah, you're right. There's not a lot of size for position. I mean, I guess it'd be Lively, Leonard Miller, and who'd you say? Who's the other one?
Lively, Leonard Miller, Grady Dick was
Grady Dick, yeah.
the other one.
Yeah, everyone else is kind of small.
Yeah, there's a lot of guards. There's a lot of combo guards in that range. Yeah.
One of them's going to get buff.
One of them, Buff Kin.
Buff Kin.
City. Yeah, City's not a lotto pick, but somebody that's interesting at 37. I'm hearing. I mean, the Thunder might be able to get Bilal at 12 and Rayon Rupert at 37. There's just Rupert is kind of falling down draft boards.
Yeah,
so,
if they got, I know I've been surprised. Sissoko, he has seemed to have been falling. Like when we started all this, he was kind of like in the early 20s. And now you see some where he's like down at 40.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if they got him in that range, I would be excited. I mean, because who cares at that point?
Yeah. Oklahoma City.
What? Okay.
Make the shirts. Oklahoma City. If they draft,
it's almost too good that just saying it doesn't.
It doesn't register. It's too good. SIDY. Yeah. Oklahoma City. Make the shirts. Just go ahead and print them. If he gets drafted at 37, go ahead and print them.
You know what? Print them now.
Print them now. Just because of the way it sounds and the way it reads.
Have you read The Secret? You just put what you want out in the world. I haven't read it, but I think that's what it is.
You just put it out there.
You just print shirts.
Print the Wembanyama shirts.
This is why people get tattoos of like their team winning the championship before they actually win the championship.
Yeah, it's quite foolish. Quite psycho behavior to do something like that. Okay. I was going to do an exercise, but we can save it for next week.
Because we're already at an hour and 15 minutes.
Hour 12. So we'll save that.
Yeah, before the draft, I would like to, with Andrew, do a My Guys draft.
Yeah.
Where we're not necessarily drafting guys for the Thunder, but just guys in this draft that we believe in. And here's the extra thing, Andrew. We can't choose the same guys. So if you want someone, you have to go get them. And we'll go back and forth. So be thinking of that.
I think there are multiple listeners that could just step in and do that for me. I know exactly what I'm going to do.
You know what's like we've talked about how much we generally like all of the guys in this draft. It's kind of hard to find a prospect that you're just completely out on for every team. But you know that there's going to be busts in the lottery. And I feel like this year more than any other year, it's been really hard to identify like who I truly don't believe in at the top when you know there's going to be someone.
Yeah.
That's scary.
There's going to be somebody like
there's probably going to be multiple guys in the top 5.
Cam Whitmore who doesn't figure out the shooting. Maybe it's Amin Thompson who's
could be Amin Thompson.
Just doesn't ever work out.
Well, I'm sure he'll work out, Andrew.
Just doesn't work out. Yeah. Hood Scafino, somebody that could go in the lottery that I'm like kind of meh on. Keontae George, I'm very meh on. We'll see. The draft night, I think, is going to be very, very interesting to see.
Are you guys doing a thing?
We're going to do a thing. We've got to nail down all of that. I won't be there, but the other guys will be there for sure.
Will you be at the draft?
I'll be at the draft.
Wait, are you really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Is it in Brooklyn?
It's in Brooklyn. Yep.
Wow.
So, we're going to be there. We're going to do...
Is this your first draft?
It's my first draft. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. We're going to try to get some video on the streets with some fans pre-draft.
Yeah.
We're going to talk to a lot of these guys. Apparently the media availabilities for the draft are awesome. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. My first experience at the draft, like actually being at the draft. So
I hope you make it on the broadcast.
Oh, that'd be great.
We want you to vomit.
Throw up. I was gonna say this is something that we've actually talked about for a while. That if you get on the screen, that you just throw up. You just find a way to throw up, and you will be legend.
Legend. Yeah, everyone will love you.
I mean, a different kind of legend, but yeah, you would. I don't know if at this point it'd be something that I would definitely want to do. It's like
I think it'd make you a star, Andrew.
The Thunder draft Bilal Coulibaly, and then you go to me, and I'm just throwing up. I think it'd be pretty good. It'd be really good theater.
By the way, you didn't put our names up. I had a very special name for this episode. Alcula Baby Cakes. Pretty good.
Cool.
Alcula Baby Cakes.
I don't know why. Oh, it does that because I don't want to have the names for the Friday podcast. And I left them out. There we go.
Might be my new handle name.
You should change it.
Baby Cakes.
Is it still Al Baisley Cakes? Because if that's true.
No, I changed it. I changed it back.
All right, good.
Had a good run, but had to change it back.
Yeah. What's going to you think Baisley gets a team? Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. Hope you guys have a great day. We'll talk to you guys again on Friday.